Hey guys, it's Kara with Kara Motivates, and I'm here to motivate you guys as always. So, welcome back to my channel. If you watched last week's video and you're back, you subscribe, thank you so much. You know, we're going to be continuing with the series Giants Do Fall. If you are new to this channel, I just want to encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. On this channel in particular, we are going to keep each other encouraged. We're also going to expose a lot of lies that the enemy has placed upon Christians, believers, and God is wanting to expose those things so that we can truly go forth in our God-like nature, and we can do the things that God has called us to do out of courage, out of faith, and by exposing things that the enemy has placed on us through depression, through trauma, through anger, we can begin to come into that full identity and do the things God has called us to do, that we were anointed to do, and truly live in purpose. So if that, excites you and you feel led, I want to encourage you to subscribe. So, okay, let's go for. Okay, guys, so last week we actually talked about insecurities. Insecurities can actually be considered as a giant. It is going to be in correlation to 1 Samuel chapter 17. And this is basically just where David fought Goliath. He slayed Goliath, and he had pretty much Israel, as he was king of Israel at that time, to be deemed worthy and significant because they had been disgraced by the prior king. So insecurities can also be considered a giant. A giant is anything that will limit you from doing the will of God, anything that will have you to question your abilities, and really can bring you fear. And if you're not careful, that fear can stop you from doing what God has graced you to do. So last week we talked about insecurities, things that could be like how you feel about yourself, things that maybe your past has caused you to feel about yourself. And if you're not careful, those things can really cause you to be stagnant. We exposed the lies of the enemy last week. So today we're actually going to talk about people. People can actually be your physical limitation. And if you're not careful, if you allow the word curses that they place upon you to really take root in you, it can cause you to not do what God has called you to do. Although God has said, yes, go forth, you can do it, I'm with you, you're not doing it in your own strength, it's going to be me the whole time, I'm just using you as a body, a vessel. And David, which God considered David a man after his own heart. Just a bit of a backstory. Prior to, or in the previous chapters before 17, Saul was actually the king over Israel, and Saul had really brought some disgrace to Israel at that time because he was kind of just going rogue in a lot of areas where God had given him direction, and he was not doing what he was supposed to do. So other parts of that area did not take Israel seriously because of that. God really rebuked Saul at that time, and it says that he had regretted making him king over Israel. So he asked Samuel to anoint David as the new king of Israel. And David was, a lover of God, and that's how God acknowledged him, which was a really beautiful relationship in my eyes. So it goes on when you read through First Samuel. And again, guys, I want to encourage y'all to make sure you read the whole entire First Samuel. That way you're able to get a better understanding, and it really will bless you, because if you don't know, God actually speaks to you through his word, and he wants us to know his voice and how he speaks to us so that he can give us direction. So make sure y'all go back through and read First Samuel. But as a physical limitation, this really caught my eye. And it basically goes on to say in this story, and I'm going to just give it, synopsis, but David began to inquire. David actually, went in the area of where the Philistines were, and this was Goliath. He was the Philistine. He was, in an uproar, challenging people like, yeah, I'm this and this, and who's gonna fight me from Israel, which one of you, da 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 da, and just going on and on and on about who was gonna fight him. David had came back down there, and he was inquiring because he heard that, he heard a group of people talking about, yeah, man, if you fight Goliath, the king, which was Saul, is going to give you at that time, he's going to give you a lot of money. He's going to grace you, for a bunch of things. And yeah, but you have to kill Goliath in order to get all of these things. David began to inquire. He's like, yeah, okay, like, where do I sign up? Pretty much like, I'm not afraid. God has deemed me worthy. If God be for me, who could really be against me? He believed that times 10. Now, that type of faith, that is the type of faith I am just praying to acquire, because again, the way they describe Goliath, he was huge. You know what I mean? So David had faith at that time compared to everyone else like no other. So as David was inquiring, it began to say Eliab, and this was actually David's older brother. He heard David asking and inquiring, and this is what he decided to say to David. He said, what did he say? He said, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. So this is what he was actually saying to David. And he was actually upset because David, he saw the courage, he saw the spunk that David had at that time in order to possibly go up against Goliath. David decided to, kind of reply back to him and just basically was saying like, man, I'm just asking a question. But they also say that even though Eliab came down so hard on him, David began to ask another group of people, what's the perks of slaying this Goliath? David was not deterred by what Eliab was questioning him, nor his energy that was behind whatever Eliab was saying. He began to focus on the anointing that was placed on his life. Also, just knowing that God was with him. God, again, had already anointed him as the king after Saul. So he knew that God had graced him for a time such as this. And if he was going to be king over Israel, he needed to bring back glory and restore that glory to Israel. So not only did Eliab come against him. Now, mind you, this is God. God had given him. And when God asks you to do something, you have courage like no other. You have faith like no other. And it's something that literally comes over you to where you say, God, if you be for me, who could be against me? Literally, it's do or die. God, I trust you with my whole heart. And that's the mindset that David had. And that's how you know when God is calling you to do something great, it don't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to anyone else around you. And God is exposing you. He's giving you all these ideas. He's giving you this creativeness. He's giving you this spunk, this energy. Literally, now you got more energy to go and study, go and read, go and grow, go and make a blueprint. He's giving you all of these different things to be able to function in your new season. To be able to function in now your identity as king or queen. David began to still inquire, hey, y'all, what's the perks of slaying this Goliath? Because, see, I already know that God is with me. Then there came Saul. Now, mind you, Saul, I think he was still handling a lot of the wars and things at that time. But mind you, prior to that, God had given David the okay as king. God had said, you are my anointed. Nobody else could care or would it have mattered to or benefited from. But God said, David, you're worthy. So I'm going to anoint you as king. And that's the same thing that God says to us each and every day. Hey, I don't care what your mother says. I don't care what your father says. I don't care what your friends are saying. I've anointed you as worthy. So it goes on to say where even even Saul said, he began to say to David, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from youth. So then it goes on to basically where David is just going over all his credentials. He's like, look, man, I've been keeping all these sheep. I've been doing everything my daddy asked me to do. And I know that I'm ready. I'm a warrior at heart. And not only am I a warrior at heart, meaning whatever God was having David to do, and mind you, they minimalized what he was doing. Though he was obedient to God, he was respectable of his father, Jesse. He was just a sheep keeper in their eyes. But mind you, whatever God had him doing in that season of just sheep keeping, it was enough to where he had built the tenacity, the strength, the courage to go out and slay Goliath. So he was basically just saying, I'm basically, I've killed lions, I've killed bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. See, he knew God would be with him because he knew how God viewed Israel. He knew God wanted to restore glory back to Israel. So he trusted God. That God, if you use me, if you've had me to go through all of these things of killing lions and bears, and though I overcame it, it was hard. See, sometimes though we overcome past limitations and trials and tribulations, it's difficult. It leaves scars. It leaves wounds. And at that time, we may not understand why it is we're having to go through it. But little did he know, or up until that moment of applying himself, he understood this is why God had me to do such things. This is why each and every day for years, I was just a sheep keeper. This is why God threw a couple monkey wrenches in order to train me up, in order to deem me as worthy so that I may see myself. Because see, he began to give his credentials. He said, yeah, man, I'm doing all of this. I can fight this Philistine. He began to give his credentials to the people that were rejecting him, that were saying, you're too small. You're just a young warrior. That's why you're not out here fighting the bigger wars. That's why we think you're out here just to speculate on what's going on. You're not ready for this type of war. And in most cases, guys, that's where most of our limitations come from. Sometimes the people around you will try to project their own insecurities, their own limitations. And a lot of times it can stimulate from jealousy. It can stimulate from them feeling unworthy themselves. And with them feeling like that, they will say things to you to try to discourage you, to giving God a no when he's asking for your yes. It's very unfortunate that people are like that, but I thank God, because when you know how God works through you and how he works through a situation, God a lot of times is making sure that we believe. See, he's already said, hey, I'm giving you the victory. Do what I asked you to do. Go start the business. Go into the cities. Go disciple. Go do all of these things. He's given us the goal to do it. He wants to confirm if we're going to do what or if he can trust us with doing whatever he's called us to do. Can I trust you that you'll go through the rejection? You'll go through the lies. You'll go through the deceit to do what I've called you to do, in order to not only bring victory to the kingdom of heaven, but you're also going to reap. Because again, whoever slayed Goliath at that time was going to get wealth and marriage and all of these things that at that time were prized possessions. We want to know, and we want to expose that whenever someone is speaking against what God has called you to do, that can be considered a giant. And giants do fall. And we have to be the first ones in order to not only believe in ourselves, to deem ourselves as worthy, to know that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that we are amazing enough, that we are anointed enough, but also to know that if God has given you the vision, that's all that matters. Because when God gives you the vision, he will make provision. In David's own strength, he could not kill Goliath. No one could. They said Goliath was invincible. And the way that they described David, he was a regular guy. But his faith had to match his output. He had inner faith. And when he projected, when he began to try to, come against Goliath, that energy had to match. And God did the rest. God is wanting to use us as vessels, but he's wanting us to make sure we have not only the right people in our ear to encourage us to our next season, but to be able to cast down every lie. And even when we have to sit and hear when people say, oh, you can't do it, you're not worthy, to still go forth anyway. And because we're human, he knows that, okay, it may hurt them a little bit. It may cut them a little bit. It may make them want to get back at that person and show them. But our proving must only be for the benefit of God. God is saying that whatever he's called you to do in this season, you can do it. You just have to trust and know that you are worthy. So every lie or everything that maybe a family member, a friend, a post you've read that has stuck with you and now you can't get it out of your memory, if it does not align with God is calling you to do, expose it, cast it down, and go forth. Slay the Goliath. Okay, guys, so my phone died and actually my twin girls woke up. This is baby Hannah, and baby Sarah is over there actually looking at us from afar. So before she gets rowdy, I'm gonna wrap this video up. But I just want to say how this message actually blessed me, where I had to give God the glory, because I can remember in so many instances in my past where I would speak I would speak the vision of God for my life in that season. I would try to speak life. I would try to say what I'm getting ready to do and how I'm going to do it, and go back to school and tackle this giant. And people knowingly and unknowingly would maybe say things that would possibly deter me in that season, or try to deter me. And a lot of seasons, my faith was not as strong and it would really limit me. But in those seasons to where God's word was built up in me, where I had really allowed it to take root in me, I was able to slay that Goliath, do what God had called me to do in that season, and reap a harvest. And whether the harvest was a physical thing, it could have also been a spiritual gift where God would really just increase my wisdom, or whatever I needed in that season. And that is exactly what God is wanting us to do. He's saying that obedience is better than sacrifice. And he's wanting us to surround ourselves with people who will continuously speak life over death on our behalf and whatever concerns us. He's wanting to say, he's wanting us to know that whatever he's giving you the vision to do, he's also giving you the power to do. He's cleared all of the obstacles out, whether it looks like an obstacle or not. It's a mirage. And even if you physically have to go through, he's giving you the stamina. He's giving you the power to go through. So make sure you have people around you that are supporting you. Make sure you take the word of God with you wherever you go, like a sword. And really, in this moment, just thank God. If this is speaking to you, if you can say, hey, in this instance, I have family members, I have people coming against me, just know that you're that much closer to your next. Because just as David, when he slayed, Goliath after that, he received his inheritance. God is wanting to do great things in our lives. But he has to be able to trust us with this next season, that we're going to continue to glorify him. So be encouraged. Don't let anything limit you in this season. And know that God has made a path for you that only you can walk. So walk it. I love you. Know that nothing broken, nothing missing for as long as you live. Go forth.